Peace and blessings, people. This is your brother, asarimhotep, with the Mandela Institute for the Advancement of Science and Culture. And this is the Mbongi. And today we're going to have a discussion on an update on a proposal that I first brought forth in 2009. And that is regarding a name for African Americans. I have since updated and changed the proposed name. And so we're going to have a discussion on that, the African American identity crisis, and the steps for a proper identification. All of that and more when we return in just a sec. Okay, I'm back. Hopefully y'all can hear me. Let me know if y'all can hear me now in the chat. I know it's going to be a slight delay. So, sorry for the... there we go. Okay, y'all can hear me now? Cool. If I can just get this stand to act right, then we are in business. So, sorry for the delay. Here we go again. That's why you can't buy cheap items from Amazon. Don't skimp on the funds. Let me see. So let me raise that just a little bit. Let's see. There we go. Okay. So welcome again. Okay, there we go. This is your brother Asarimhotep once again. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Uh, I don't know what happened in terms of the volume prior to, and then of course the stand wants to not stand, and we can't stand for that. So uh, we are back in business, and so of course I like to start off by giving a shout out to everyone who is in the chat currently. And so peace of Sister Tamika, Annie Herrick Califani, Infinite Minds, Lamar Pope, Juan Love, Sylvester Stewart, OG Gorilla, and Jamar Shala. So thank you for joining us today, and Brother Mathis, and I am not Pablo. No, you're not late. I am Pablo, so we're just getting started. We're just only 6 minutes in, and so you are good. So peace to that good guy, and anybody who may happen to be on Facebook in the chat. Peace and blessings to you all, even though y'all won't be showing up on my feed here. Stewart, not Sylvester. Oh, I said Sylvester, my bad. Sylvia Stewart. I was reading it too fast. I do apologize. So thank you all for coming. And so again, as I stated at the beginning of the conversation, we're going to have a discussion on the update on a proposal that I gave, or at least published, in 2009. And so I don't want to take up too much of your time. So what I am going to do is share my screen, because we have this in presentation form. Peace to Sister LaDosha Wright and Langston Morrison. Thank you all for joining. And so today's conversation is titled, peace, Brother T'Challa, the Ba.Nkole or Ba.Kala of North America and African American identity. Now, as I stated before, in 2009, and I guess before we go there, of course, if you have not picked up Aluja or Aluja, volume one and two, but this is volume 2, or Towards a Comparative Dictionary of Chicam and Modern African Languages, I highly encourage each and every one of you to pick that up, and you can get that at my website, asarimhotep.com. And many may not know of this work. This was my second book that I published in 2009. It is titled The Bakala of North America, The Living Sons of Vitality. Subtitled, In Search of a Meaningful Name for African Americans. And this is my first proposal on a name for African Americans. And it's broken down into 2 morphemes. So Ba being the Bantu noun class prefix, human class prefix plural, and then Kala is a word technically for charcoal, but we use a little bit of paronymy because there's a Kala meaning to be, to exist, and Kala meaning fire and vitality. And so we had a whole discussion on the creative usage of that term or those terms to create an identity. And so basically 11 years has passed, and going on 12. And so I have done some updated work. So this text that is, which you see on the screen, is actually going to be revised. And so this is just a preview on a revitalization, of the particular text. So if you intend to purchase this text, unless you just want to have it as a souvenir, I would wait until the second edition comes out, because a lot has been learned since then, and going to make some corrections on some things. And then, of course, we're going to uh, go in a different direction, but the same direction. And for those who have the text, you'll know what I mean. And so this is the word Bakala, written in the Mandombe script of the Congo. And so we're going to have to rewrite it with the new name. And so the definition that I gave the word Bakala is, and this is just a long version, of course, the enlightened, spirited, vitalistic people of the sun, whose love radiates like the warmth of burning coals. And again, we're using paronymy because the word Kala in the Bantu languages has these many meanings in terms of vitalism, in terms of life to be in existence, spirit, the word love, and again, the word charcoal, which is why you see on the front cover this kind of this charcoal piece at the top, and then of course the rising sun over the horizon, uh, superimposed with the Ankh symbol. And so, and these are the radiating peripheral meanings, of the term. And so there's at the core of it, black, burning, charcoal, fire, coal. I said energy already, which gives birth to spirit, strength, power, warmth, animation, enlightenment, and then to overcome, endure, to have being, to shine, and then, be lovable, be pleasing, to carry, to lift, and then pattern, take a fancy to like, the living, the charming, and again, be pleasing and pattern. And so there's a radiation of terms that you see as a result, of this meaning. But I decided again to go in a similar but different direction in terms of the proposal for the name. And so, of course, the act of Aluja or Luja, going back and referring to one's steps to restore that which has been broken, to make new again, to restore. This is an act of this particular process. And so by going back into the African languages, I found what I think to be a better and more fitting term, but still kind of has the same, consonant structure for the most part of the first suggestion. And so, for a number of years prior to the 2009 publication, I, would be in these debates and conversations concerning African American identity. And, you run into a lot of different perspectives on our people. And so there are some people who are satisfied with African American. There are some people who claim that we are Hebrews. There are some people who claim that we are Moors. There's some people who claim is that we are, a lost tribe of Shabazz and all of this. And then some just say we Africans, and, someone identified themselves with specific African groups like the Yoruba or the Akan, or the Wolof, for example. And I found each and every one of these proposals to be problematic for a variety of different reasons. And we'll get into that tonight. And so now the latest thing is that we are ADOS. And personally, I think this is going backwards, beyond backwards, in terms of the initial, Negro. Like Negro is a step up above ADOS. And I understand the term or the phraseology of ADOS, meaning, American descendants of slaves, as a legal reference in the fight for reparations, because you have to have in an identifier in terms of the people, um, to be able to distinguish, who the victim is in terms of the crime for restitution. So that is, it's understandable in that context. However, what I have been hearing is a lot of people taking that phraseology and using it as an identity, as if, we want to identify ourselves as American descendants of slaves. That's not an identity. That is not a label. That is not a heritage that you want to pass on to your people. That's not how our ancestors, or that's not the motivation of the tradition in which African people named themselves. And so, since there's been a lot of this ADOS discussion, I figured that, this is a good time to kind of bring up these conversations and to really start pushing and promoting this proposal that I have come up with and that has been working on over the decades. And so you have those people. Then you have those people who believe that uh, we don't need to create our identity. We just African people. Well, in a greater understanding of African people, yes. But by identifying yourself simply as African, you're really not identifying yourself, because African is a blanket term. And the African encompasses the Seer, the Dogon, the Amazulu, the Rwandese, the Ethiopians, et cetera, the Tigray, the Libyans, whomever, the Khoikhoi, the Sandawe, though they're all Africans, and every group is distinctive, even though we have this Pan-African umbrella for which we identify everyone with. They still have these distinctions between them. And so by simply saying that you're African does not mean that you have a good identifier, for yourself. It doesn't speak to your own history and ancestry in terms of, the developments here in the United States. And so again, primarily this is a discussion about the identity crisis for African Americans here in the United States. And so while one could try to blanket and create a term for all, I don't want to, act like I speak for all different groups. So this doesn't apply to the people in the Caribbean. It doesn't apply to people in South America. It doesn't apply to the Africans who are in, the UK or France, in Arabia or whatever. If they find it necessary for themselves, that's a conversation that they must have amongst themselves to find a name and identifier for them that uniquely identifies them and speaks to their immediate ancestors and historical experience in the place that they're at. And so I leave that up. I respect their agency to do so. But since I am a child of the Africans who were enslaved here in the Americas, this is a conversation that I can have with my people, concerning the direction we should go moving forward, and the legacy and the inheritance that we should give our children and our children's children in that fight and effort for our independence and interdependence, upon one another in terms of African American is concerned. And so, to those who believe that we can just go and adopt other people's identities on the continent, you know, we have to observe, in my opinion, a couple of proverbs that are, I think, speak to this particular type of experience. And so if you see on your screen, there's a Bairu proverb that states, having a family field doesn't prevent you from digging your own. So just because there are different African identities and African people on the continent who see themselves in a particular light does not mean, and we're related to them, does not mean that we can't develop for our own. And so this is an idea that is prevalent on the continent of Africa. And another proverb from the same people is, if you keep longing for a better home, a wanderer's sleeping mat will always be your sole companion. And I like this proverb because it speaks to, those of us who continue, instead of, thinking of identifications for ourselves, we want to attach ourselves to everybody else. So we want to be Hebrews, we want to be Moors, we want to be, Israelites, Arabs, and a lot of us want to be Latino and all of this other kind of stuff. Everybody but ourselves. And this I find problematic. Thus, the years of research and writing on this subject. And so, there's an individual by the name of John Vandercook who states, a race is like a man. Until it uses its own talents, takes pride in its own history, and loves its own memories, it can never fulfill itself completely. And the quotes that I am, excuse me, get a notice on my screen here. Okay. Sorry, there we go. I'm on this phone, and every little notice pops up and blocks my screen. So so all these quotes that I'm going to be quoting in the next few has to speak to, the concept of agency. And so a lot of us, when we have these issues with identity, how I see it is, part of the discourse is that we don't trust or we don't believe in our own agency. We believe that we have to be named by someone else. And I don't believe that we should. And so until we start seeing ourselves as worthy, then we have to, until we see ourselves as worthy, we're going to continue to be floating everywhere because we can't, get our ish together, as the saying goes. And so, as I quote in the book, Dr. Asa Hilliard, in his article, Race, Identity, Hegemony, and Education, he's talking about, on an individual level, the names that were given to us during the transatlantic slave holocaust. And he puts the conversation, I think, in its proper context. And he says, these names, in terms of our original African names, were based upon our natal and cultural bonds and thousands of years of heritage. The names were based upon our collective history and creativity. Worse, we had forgotten why we named ourselves and how we came to be given alien names in the first place. Given the sacred nature of names to African people, and given the association of a name with our identity as a family, this was a tragedy of enormous proportions. Our focus on names became a barren one, a focus without the benefit of awareness of our rich cultural traditions. Therefore, we were unprepared for the conversation about race, naming, and identity. We had come to a point where we, as a people, were named by others. Most of us had lost control of this, the most fundamental of human processes, the self determining process of naming ourselves, of telling, not asking, the world who we are. And so, again, this is at the heart of our identity crisis. We're so used to being named by other people and wanting to identify with other people that we haven't exercised our own agency, our own self-determining processes in telling the world who we are instead of, asking the world who we were. And so the Mzulu brother Jordan Ngabani, in his text Conflict of Minds on page 60, informs us that to be human is to be able to say what and who you are, and to be able to say why you are here and where you are going. It is to be able to define yourself. Ancient Zulu philosophers taught that the person was unique in that he defined himself, in that he knew the worth of the value that he was. And so we can scale this from the individual level. And he talks about this in the text in terms of the collective and why they named themselves Zulu, this word for the heavens, and the philosophical underpinnings for which that name has meaning. And so it is within that context that even on the individual level, that this makes sense. And so I want to give the African context and to reaffirm the late Dr. Asa Hilliard. and thank you all for your super chats. And so peace to Brother Robert Rand. Thank you for your contribution. And thank you, Brother David Shaw, who's just stopping by and saying hello in the midst of his studies. And I understand, good brother. So hopefully you can catch the rest on the archive. And so thanks again, and get your study on. Good brother David Shaw out of the H-Town. Okay, let me get back to this in peace. Brother Donnie Williams, thank you for joining us, and anybody else who may have come in. Pan-African Designs, Womp, and Phi Light and Tis. Thank you all for joining. So let me get back. So here we go. So I'm gonna address this one comment here. So Pan-African Design says we have too many names to do so unless we can agree on our chronology and pick a name that predates outside influences. This will be answered in this conversation. And so I will continue. And peace to Sister Naja Phillips. Thank you for joining. And to continue, Dr. Asa Hilliard states, however, there simply was so very much more to who we were than our pigment. So now he's talking about those of us who just simply want to consider ourselves Black. Black is not an identity. that's a descriptor, and that's again a naming from Europeans. And so it is the naming of Europeans just describing our skin color, but it doesn't tell us who we are. And so this is what Dr. Asa Hilliard states here. He says, however, there simply was so much more to who we were than our pigment. So how did we come to become preoccupied with with what rather than who we were, with our political and economic struggle rather than with our essence and our destiny? How had we become individuals rather than family? How did we become a temporal rather than an eternal people, a local rather than a cosmic people? Africans had seen it this way. And so, I really recommend that, everyone search the internet and see if y'all can find, hopefully it's still up, y'all can find it somewhere on the net. Race, Identity, Hegemony, and Education by Dr. Asa Hilliard III. And it is a very good read. And so he reminds us here that when we named ourselves in Africa, we had a larger family connection in terms of the names. We had a cosmic identity rather than a local identity. And thanks to Sister LaDasha Wright for your contribution. And thank you to Donnie Williams for your contribution. It is very much appreciated. Thank you, Lo. And I will continue. And so Dr. Asa Hilliard is reminding us of that. Like, people think that just saying that we're Black people is good, and not understanding that reinforces European hegemony over us. Because when we named ourselves, we never named ourselves describing our skin color or our physical features. How we named ourselves was in association with divinity, with some kind of heroic, event, or an ideal that was to be worked into in terms of collective people. So like when you think of Burkina Faso, the upright people, they labeled themselves based on the collective character of the people. They didn't name themselves the quote unquote nappy haired people, the 5-foot people, because Africans don't describe themselves in that way. So I will continue. And so even Dr. Malidoma Somé, in his text, Healing Wisdom of Africa, he states, the Dagara believe that everyone is born with a purpose, and that this purpose must be known in order to ensure an integrated way of living. People ignorant of their purpose are like ships adrift in a hostile sea. They are circling around. As a result, tribal practices emphasize the discovery before birth of the business of the soul that has come to this world. A person's purpose is then embodied in their name, thus constituting an inseparable reminder of why the person walks with us here in this world. Again, your name from an African context is a label, describes why you are here, what you came here to do. It is your North Star. It is a goal to accomplish in life. You are named something, and then you work your life living up to your name. Names are very important in African cultures and traditions. And so this is the kind of, insight and cultural nuances that we have been missing over the years because we've been, living with white folks and trying to be white folks. And so when it comes to names and identity and things, we don't have a grounding, a context for even thinking about if we were to name ourselves, what would we name ourselves? And why would we name ourselves what we name ourselves? And so this is the question that I raised in 2009 and published as the Bakala of North America, which I'm currently updating right now. And so in the collective sense, Dr. Kaikosa Kajangu, in his PhD dissertation, Beyond the Colonial Gaze, Reconstructing African Wisdom Traditions, he states the following in terms of the ancestral vision. So when we look at the collective name of a people, it is the encapsulation of the ancestral vision. So what is the ancestral vision? The ancestral vision is a vivid expression that describes why a particular community of memory exists and what types of human beings it intends to deliver. It expresses the feelings that members of this community of memory hold for their community and its place in the world. Often, this vision is the name that the community gives itself. Again, everywhere we go, we see that there's a purpose to the collective name, and it embodies the vision that the ancestors have for their progeny. And so this is what I want to bring to the conversation. So when people start talking about they ADOS and they're Moors and all of this other kind of stuff, these kind of conversations they're not having because they're not grounded in the African tradition. They're not grounded in African languages. They're not grounded in African worldviews. And us as African people here in the United States, you know, thanks to the paradigm of Afrocentricity, et cetera, you know, we ground ourselves in our traditions and we let our traditions and the creativity of our ancestors inspire us to do new things in the new era. And so in the text, in the Bakala of North America, I came up with a set of criteria for a proper name adoption. So even if, you know, the collective doesn't agree with the name that I suggest for us, right? Because of course we can always reject it. I think that we should take it, but that's just me and I'm being biased. But if we don't, even if we don't accept the name for what I'm suggesting, what I put here is the criteria that we should think of if we're going to use any name to identify ourselves. And so this is why, and I think this should have been a more previous slide, you know, going against why not just call ourselves either Black or Negro or the tribe of Shabazz or Israelites or African, et cetera, et cetera. And I give in the parentheses my, you know, kind of a short reason why we should reject all of these as labels as an ethnicity label for African American people. You know, Black is simply a description of skin color, not essence. Negro is the word Black in another language, description of skin, not essence. Moor, no meaning. Nobody knows what the word Moor means. And it refers ultimately to Berbers. The tribe of Shabazz, not from Asia, and etymology uncertain. And so, in meaning that we're not from Asia. Israelites, we're not related to the Israelites. No matter what these Israelites try to tell you, we not Israelites. And that's a whole different discussion for a whole nother day. And even the word African itself may actually be a term that is related to the Berbers, like a subtribe of Berbers. And I discussed that in the text. And that's something that I will be keeping in the updated text. Excuse me as I take a sip of some Snapple. All right, I'm back. So uh, this is something that I like to quote a lot, but I'm going to re-quote it here again because I want to emphasize the nature of agency. The second fundamental principle while traveling on the superhighway of wisdom is speaking in one's own name. Every sage that I have so far encountered on my journey to wisdom has told me, as he or she was told by their mentors, to speak in your own name, never in mine. What does this mean? Sages will tell you to nourish your mind with teachings that have been enriched by countless generations of sages, but they insist that you must remain truthful to the voice that brought you into life or the voice of your destiny. Now, I see in the comments that more is from Amor and Beloved, just like Kemet. No, it is not. That's folk etymology. Shaka almost already broke down the etymology of Shabazz. I haven't heard from Shaka almost in a hot minute, but I'll continue. But what we're saying here again, or what Dr. Kajangu is saying here again, is that, even though you may study and find favor in various different traditions, you must ultimately speak in your own name and never try to parrot any other people and how they do things. And so you can be inspired by them and do things in your own unique way. But a wholesale copying people is never acceptable. So for those hip hop heads, we know biting is not the thing. But of course, certain things you can adopt because it's your heritage. And so, some aspects of that conversation will be addressed, here today. But we speak in our own name, never in others. So now I'm getting to the 7 criteria for a new name. And so the first is that the name must be able to speak to the many rooms which make up our mansion. And, if you read the Bakala of North America, this would make more sense. Thus, African American diversity in personality. And so we understand that African Americans are a diverse people. We're not a monolith. So, as much as possible, whatever name that we adopt, it should have a broad application that no matter what social class, no matter what particular religious background or whatever experience and perspective, that they can all see themselves in some aspect of the identity, because it speaks to who they are. Secondly, the name must speak to the history of African Americans in terms of our sojourn here in the United States. So it must have some reflection on the history that we have here. So we're grounding ourselves on our experiences here. And the name should, to some level, speak to that. The name must be anchored in several African languages. So even if we, of course, unless we just make up a name out of the blue, if we are adopting an African word, I argue that the word itself should have cognates in a wide variety of African languages, because the African American is the amalgamation of ancestors that were brought over here to the United States from a variety of different places in Africa. I think the total is, over 50. I think 54 to be exact, but someone can look that up and double check in terms of how many ethnic groups were actually stolen off of the continent and brought to the various places in the Americas. But we are an amalgam of all of those traditions. excuse me, all of those lineages. And so, is as much as possible, that name should have reflexes in a good number of those languages that exist in these particular areas, even though we're just adopting one variation from one language wherever we adopt the word from. Fourthly, the name must have a philosophical texture in which to build a cosmology. And so remember what Asa Hilliard said, that, you know, in as a result of the transatlantic slave holocaust, we started thinking of ourselves of a local people instead of a cosmic people. And I think that the name that we choose should have a cosmic dimension, for which we can build up, a cosmology, even a mythology for teaching children our relationship to the universe. Fifthly, the name must speak to our gifts and the names we've already have used to identify ourselves here in the United States. So even though we're trying to remove ourselves, we still have some attachment to the names. And so whatever the meanings that we have given to the names, hopefully the new adopted name, touches upon those meanings as well. Lastly, the name must speak to a collective purpose or a mission that can arguably be established by examining the historical usage of our most precious gifts to humanity. I know that's very poetic, but it again, the name is a labeling, is a crystallization of the ancestral uh, vision. And so that's what we're speaking to here. And so, in terms of the characteristics of African American people, Dr. Wade Nobles, and I cite was actually in several of his publications, but the specific one that I borrowed these things from is the citation is in the text. And I have the book somewhere around here. I have to find it. I'll give it to y'all later. But we don't have to, reinvent the wheel in terms of understanding the characteristics that uniquely identify African American people. And this is something that Baba Wade Nobles had already done for us. So he's already given us a worldview for which to find a name that encapsulate all these characteristics. And thank you, Robert Rand, for your contribution. So he gives 8 precepts, and he states that consubstantiation, interdependence, egalitarianism, collectivism, transformation, cooperation, humanness, and synergism are the precepts that define African American culture or whatnot. And then there's these reoccurring themes that pop up as well, and there are 9 in total. And so this is a lecture unto itself, so I won't go into the details of it, but hopefully the names kind of give you an idea of what's underlying these precepts and reoccurring themes. So spirituality, resilience, humanism, communalism, orality and verbal expressiveness, personal style and uniqueness, realness, emotional vitality, musicality, and rhythm. And so hopefully y'all agree, for those who are really in touch with African American culture, that these reoccurring themes and precepts really speak to who we are as a people collectively. And so what I argue is that the name should as much as possible kind of speak to these characteristics. And so that's what I suggested in 2009. And a quick commercial, if you want to support this channel and the upcoming film China Into, I highly recommend everyone to go to my Patreon page, and that is www.patreon.com/asarimhotep, and consider joining one of the tiers. There are some uh, gifts that you can get for being a member, and some upcoming free stuff that we are working into in starting this month and going into January. So please consider joining the Patreon page. Again, that's patreon.com/asarimhotep. Now let's continue. Now, as I mentioned before, the new suggested name is the Ba.Nkole or Incole. It almost sounds similar to the Bakala, but there's a distinct difference. And so, as I have shown in Alluja Volume 2 and in the towards a comparative dictionary of Chicam and related African languages, this word Incole is a Chiluba Bantu word, and it ultimately derives from a root ela, which means to make or leave or exit from the self, any idea, sound, speech, or object, or to emit, to express, to speak, to introduce, to put, set, make, push, dispose, arrange, lay, apply, put out to place. In short, it is a word meaning to do. Now they add an extra la in it to make it mean to make to do, for, in favor of, versus, to the disadvantage of, to launch something, sure, against, towards, in, or whatnot. And it has cognates in the ancient Egyptian language, which is the R, to separate, to, toward, and iri, to make, to create, to engender. So we have on in the chat, brother Erie Herod. Oh, my bad, wrong one. Erie Herod Kalfani, or any Herod Kalfani, and in there is a variant, of the word in a nasal form. But hold on one sec. Incole means belief in Zulu. Okay, he's having a whole different discussion. And so that root has a number of prefixes that give it a different type of nuance. So if you add ng to the beginning of ela, you have ngila or ngila, meaning a person who acts consistently, an agent, a doer, man of action, good marksmanship, a marksman. The cognate for that is a maker of things, of something, Iru in, or Yaru in the ancient Egyptian language, or Chicam as I call it. If you add ku in front of ila, it becomes quele or quela. And the nasal prefix is an agent prefix. And so in one context, it is a name for the divine or God in Chiluba. But it's also a word for an eminent or a powerful person, someone with prestige and fame, or somebody who has the ability to act, to do, to make, to manufacture a skill set or something. It is someone who has power to make things happen. And so a variant of that word is Ba.Nkole, which means force, energy, or spirit. And then in the voiced variant is Ngulu, physical power or strength. And so it is a word for power. And so when we talk about the Ba.Nkole, we're talking about the eminent or powerful people. And there's a context for that. And so it's just not power, but you got to understand what power means. And so, as I have shown on my Facebook, and I'm working on a journal article for on the etymology of the word Orisha, and I see the question by Thought Evoker: what does Ba mean? He's coming in late. Ba is just a prefix for the plural human class in Bantu languages. It is in ancient Egyptian, it is the W for the plural human class. It's a suffix, but it just means they, them, but it's the plural human class. So when we think of into is a word for being, right? Or thing. And so when you say muntu, mu, as the prefix, muntu is the singular human class prefix. Ba into or bantu is the plural. So you're talking about people. So muntu is a person. Bantu are people. So just how we have, person and people in English, that's what that would be equivalent to. So the Ba is the human class prefix for people. So when you say the Ba.Nkole or Incola, you're speaking of African American people. If you just want to say Incola or Incole, you can use that as a collective, or you can even say Munkole or Mukole or Mukola, which would be the singular. So that's who you would be as an individual. You can say that I am an Incole or Incola, or I am a Mukole or Mukola as an individual. But when you're talking about the people, it depends on how you use it in a sentence, because you can say Incole or Incola as a collective, or you can just say Ba.Nkole. Thought Evoker of is Ba.Nkole of North America via. Let me put that up. Hold on. Ba.Nkole of North America via Middle Passage or pre-Columbus. I'm not arguing that this is like this name that we had prior to coming to the United States. It is a new name for us. The name itself, the word itself, is very old. And that's the purpose of this slide that I have up here, because the name is very, very old. And it is just a variation of these different names. So there's different words for God and spirit across the Negro Egyptian or the Chiena Intu language family space. So this word here, and it refers, as it refers to God, refers to the action generating principle. Again, because it has everything to do with an agent who has the power to do, to make things happen, to create, the originator of things. That's what these words mean. And so all of these words that you see on the screen here, Netcher in ancient Egyptian, Incole and Kola, Inquele and Quela, Chiluba, Orisa, Orisha, Leza, Lisa, Maweja, Mwari, Mbote, Keper in ancient Egyptian, Imboli, Imbori, Mawezi, Basi, Wobasi, Reza, Leza again. I think I have Leza on there twice. Owasi, Kabezia Mpungu, Maweze, Basi, Wasi. All of these terms are the exact same word in these African languages. The word, the fundamental, the reconstructed word is so old that it has evolved into these different pronunciations over hundreds of thousands of years. And so remember one of my criteria that whatever word we choose, it must have cognates in the vast majority of the languages from the ethnic groups for which African Americans, their ancestors derived. And so, again, I'll be putting all of this in the updated book so y'all can follow along with what is saying here. But as I mentioned before, the name has to speak to your cosmic dimension, and it shows the divinity in us. And so even for those who are still in a Christian paradigm, it says, don't you know that ye are gods? What is a god? That's the fundamental question here. And that's what I've been spending a lot of my research over the years trying to figure out. And I have finally cracked that code and is able to articulate this from a wide variety of languages and things. And so not only is the divine name such as this, so are human beings. So that's why this word Incole, Nkele, etc. Ingole is another variation of it, is an eminent or powerful person, a man. It's not just, speaking of a divine, like some external, power or force. Human beings are that. So it speaks to us, it speaks to that fundamental characteristic of being human, is our artistic selves. And so we'll get into that some more. And so these are other reflexes of this term. So we reconstruct this in Chiena Intu as kwiti ngwe, which means to construct or to make. And you can find it in Middle Egyptian as ked, meaning to construct, to form, to fashion. Coptic is kult, to build, and Sango is kode, in terms of crafts, manual skills. And the Hassa is gida, construction. Kana, to make. Hassa, kira, model, design. And Sumerian kid, kad, weave a mat. Or kid, ki, to build, to make, or to act. Hold on. Miles Dyson asked the question, if the thinking doesn't include people all over the diaspora. Unfortunately, this is not for the diaspora. This is speaking for African Americans in particular. And so, as I stated, you may not have been here at the beginning of the conversation, that as an African American, I can speak and suggest things on behalf of African Americans. But I would be stepping out of bounds to try to define for the Jamaican, what it means to be a Jamaican, for a Jamaican, or people in Haiti, or people in Brazil, or people in the UK, or Black folks in the UK, or in Canada, etc. And so the only jurisdiction I have is amongst us African Americans. So this conversation is speaking to, in terms of the specific name which I suggested, for African Americans. But it's a conversation for all of us in the diaspora. And so maybe this will inspire someone or some group of people within those particular areas to start thinking about how should they define themselves. And if they could define themselves, which we believe that they can, because they are agents of their own reality, what would they name themselves or whatnot? So this is I'm respecting their their right to name themselves. And so this naming, and which I'm talking about here, is for African Americans in particular. So I'll continue. So from this verb root, when you add the in prefix or that agent prefix or suffix, it becomes, a person who, one who, does all of these different things. The one who has power, the one who has skill and agency to create beyond measure. And so, the word power itself, so remember that is an eminent and powerful person, Incole. Power is the ability to have ability and the ability to act or to do. It has to deal with strength, vigor, and might. And this is from the online etymological dictionary. Especially in a battle, efficacy, control, mastery, lordship, dominion, ability or right to command or control, legal power, authority, authorization, military force, or an army. That's what the word power means. And a synonym is energy. And the word energy, again, also means the ability to act, to lead others, affect forcefully, the capacity for vigorous activity, available power. Again, that word energy derives from a root meaning to do and also work. Matter of fact, the word work and the word energy are cognates. They derive from the same Proto-Indo-European root word. And this is also an African word too, but that's another discussion. So I want people to understand what power is. And so we keep talking about nation building, and a lot of us start talking about Black African power. What does that mean? When you say Black African power, what are you saying? And so if you see yourself as powerful, that means you believe yourself to be able to do extraordinary things. And this is what our people have to grow into, and collectively believe in themselves. And so this is one of the reasons why this name was chosen. And so I want to, in terms of understanding when this word is applied to divinity, what does this mean? So remember that I said that the word Incole or whatnot is related to the word necher in ancient Egyptian. And that word is related to the Lugbara word adro. And so in this text, Lugbara religion, ritual, and authority among the East African people, 1960, the author states, I translate adro and adroa as God, although the correspondence of meaning is not exact. Adro, the basic form of the term, refers to a personified force outside of the control and beyond the understanding of living men who are his creatures. Indeed, unlike our term God in English, Adro is used also to refer to a category of objects, which are manifestations of divinity and beyond the control and understanding of men. Many apparently miraculous things are called Adro, such as what I have called the guardian spirit of man, or even matches. The word is sometimes used for testicles and for the power of procreation. Adro lives on earth and especially in rivers. He is also found in large trees and thickets and on high mountains and rocky places. He is even he is in every stream. Dot dot dot. Adro is common to all Lugbara. In addition, each clan has its own spirit called Adro. The clan is a dispersed group which is not concerned in corporate activity. This spirit is also a manifestation of God's power, and in many cases is thought of as having been a distant ancestor. And so what I'm trying to do here is is set up a context. And so you can go back again and read this. And some of this stuff I've repeated in several other conversations. And so that same word, adro, in Nature and Incole and Maweja, in Orisha, all of these are the same word. They're the cognates, they're cognates. And so is this word here in the Ga language, Wan, Wo, which means ancestors or spirit, but it's a word meaning power and strength as well. But some other cognates you find in the Egyptian language, Iwin, which is an epithet for Osiris. In the Yoruba, it's Iwin, ancestors, ghost spirits. Ingas, Won, ancestors, the living dead, shades. And in the Bachama language, which is a Nigerian language, Won, the demigod in charge of the dead, the demigod in charge of the kingdom of death, which mirrors that of what you see of Osiris in ancient Kemet. And so in the text, Religion and Medicine of the God People, this is what I argue is the best definition for what a God is. Because again, this is a cognate term for God across the African continent. And this is a very good, and this reinforces what we read prior to. A Won, a God, by God definition, is anything that can work but not be seen, and includes the smaller beings of specialized and limited activity associated with medicines and magic. Because God has to deal with the ability to do, to act, to work, or to manufacture, to make something. It's the author of something, the creator of something. And so when it's applied to spirits and the divine, it's referring to this invisible power that is responsible for all of the creative expressions that we witness in nature. And so I demonstrate here linguistically that the word Ba.Nkole, for example, Incole, is cognate with these terms. And so when you're looking for how to define this, and I'm going to be repeating this on the conversation that we're going to have tomorrow on updating the concept of worship. But so when I talk about the Ba.Nkole, this word or this phraseology speaks to, in terms of African Americans, a people of a great skill set and intellect. So remember that our ancestors were not taken because they were dumb imbeciles. The ancestors were taken to the United States because they had great skill in farming and building, in terms of medicine, in terms of nation building. And so this is why they went to such lengths to get our labor. And this goes to the second point. Remember that this term, God has to deal with one who builds, one who makes. And so who built this country? The African Americans built this country. Literally. And their labor is what, our ancestral labor is what allowed this country to have the kind of wealth that it did. And so again, this word for power having to deal with the ability to build speaks to us building the country. So remember one of my criteria. It has, the name for African American has to speak to our experiences here in the United States. And so this Ba.Nkole also speaks to us as being, and I know a lot of people are going to hate this from across the waters, but it's just a fact. It's just a fact of life. And you know, until this is usurped in the future, this is just the fact that the African Americans, in terms of the people, the Africans in the diaspora, and just even to certain people on the continent, we are the most influential across the world of African people. And we set the trends, the styles, the music across the world. Even our collective civil rights movements and our methodologies have been adopted around the world. And so African American people are influential, and you see this for those who travel across the world, and you see the culture that originate in Louisiana and Mississippi, in New York and the Bronx and in LA and all of this other kind of stuff in Houston and H-Town. These collective cultural centers and being seen across the world, including Africa. And so they imitate our style of dress. They imitate our language, our style. They even adopted the word nigga and don't even know what that word means. That's another discussion. And Africans on the continent, please quit using the word nigga. But anyway, and so the Incole also speaks to order and justice. So remember that the root of Incole, Ila, means to arrange, also to put in order. And that's what building is. It's taking something that's in a chaotic and unorganized form and organizing it and giving it function and giving it purpose. And so, and in that context, that is where you get the concept of order and justice. Us, and this is just Black folks across the diaspora and even on the continent. So this is a general thing, but one of the things that identify us is is our call for order and justice, here in the United States. And again, our protest movements for justice have been echoed around the world. Our methodologies, our leaders, and believe me, there's dialogue, and we borrow, and we get insight from leaders like Marcus Garvey coming out of Jamaica, and Stephen Biko from South Africa, and Nkrumah. But even Nkrumah, we got a lot of his ideology from African Americans because he went to school at an HBCU at Lincoln University in Pennsylvania. But even still, there's a semiotic relationship there. But order and justice is part of the purpose and why we are such a danger to Europeans, because we keep calling for order and justice and equality and fairness in this country. And that's something that they don't want to do, because it would diminish their power, because they can only be in power by trying to get over people in the world. Second to last, the Ba.Nkole are the most powerful group in terms of who sets trends in style, fashion, and music. This is not even up for debate, ever. And like I said, until, I'm not saying we'll reign forever, but when it comes to setting trends in style, fashion, and music, no one sets these trends like African Americans. Everybody across the world, even the big designers, is copying the styles that are created by African American people. And lastly, again, because Incole is a word that applies to the divine and means spirit, it speaks to us as being a very spiritual people. And so anybody, no matter what, if we have readopted African religious traditions, or whether we in Islam, or whether we in Christianity, our sense of spirituality, comes through very potently, in these particular traditions. So, again, this variation Ba.Nkole speaks, to all of these different characteristics, and these are reinforced by the precepts and the other characteristics that was talked about by Dr. Wade Nobles, spoken of earlier. And so I mentioned before that the name must also speak to and have a cosmic dimension. And this is what I want to get into this second part here. And so Excuse me, just 1 second. Okay, I'm back. And so, when one characteristic that a lot of indigenous African people have is that they have a particular cosmology that speaks to the relationship that that community not only has with itself in the natural environment, but with the larger universe itself. And I'm giving some context because we brought some of that here to the United States with us. And two books that I want to recommend that everyone read is Africanisms in American Culture by Joseph E. Holloway, who's the editor of that text, the second edition, and by a text by a woman by the name of Winifred Boss, and that is the Bantu heritage, of it's either the United States or of America. And so, if you can get a hold of those two books, you'll see how some of that indigenous African or common African cosmology plays in the development of characteristics of African American culture and response to the European hegemony and whatnot. And so, part of our genetic heritage comes from the Bambara and the Fulani people in West Africa. So there are some people who have that blood lineage in them in terms of African Americans. And so I'm just using this as an example because there are others that mirror this. And so this person who on the left hand side of the screen is the late Amadou Hapati Ba. He is a Fulani from Mali, and he's written extensively on the Bambara and Fulani cultures. And so this is coming from a text, Aspects of African Civilization. Matter of fact, I have the text. If y'all can go to my academia.edu page, I have the English translation of that text free for download. And there was a woman by the name of Susan B. Hunt at the University of Pennsylvania who translated. It's a very short book, so it's not that many pages, but she translated it to English and put it on the web. And I downloaded it way back in the mid or late 2000s, in terms of 2000, that first decade of 2000. And but it has since been removed from the net. So I put it and made it into a PDF, and I uploaded it to my academia.edu page. So you'll be able to find what I'm about to read in that greater text in the English form. So that's where you will find it. So anyway, so in describing the nature, and I'll be reading this again on tomorrow because it speaks to what we'll be talking about tomorrow. But anyway, in the Fulani and the Bambara traditions, the only traditions to which I will make reference because I believe I know them, two terms are used to designate the person. For the Fulani, they are Nedo or Nedro. I don't know how you do the double D's, and Nedaku. For the Bambara, they are Ma and Maya. The first word in both of the languages means the person. So just like how Muntu means a person, Nedo and Ma means the person in Bambara and Fulani, respectively. And the second word means the people of the person. And that is Nedaku and Maya, respectively. Indeed, tradition teaches that initially there is Ma, the person receptacle, then Maya, therefore the various aspects of Ma contained in the Ma receptacle. And Ma is a word for God, the divine. So just like how I'm suggesting that the word Incole is used as a word for God in the African languages and also a person. You find precedence in the Bambara language in the Fulani, because the word Ma in the phrase Ma.Nkole is the word for God, and then the person is Ma. So that's the person receptacle. So as the Bambara expression says, Ma Kamaya Kasa Ayera Kono. The people of the person are multiple in the person. One finds exactly the same notion among the Fulani. The concept of the person is thus from the outset very complex. It implies an interior multiplicity, concentric and superimposed planes of existence, physical, psychological, and spiritual at various levels, as well as a constant dynamism. At no time is the human person considered to be a monolithic unit, limited to his physical body, but rather a complex being inhabited by a multiplicity of beings in continuous motion. There is no question of a static or finished being. So remember what Dr. Asa Hilliard had discussed earlier, which I cited, where he talks about when the African looks at themselves, they look at themselves within a cosmic context. And here we are, the European has reduced us to our skin color. That's not how we indigenously thought. And this is just a given example to reinforce what Asa Hilliard has said. And so when it comes to the person, when we look at ourselves, we think of a singular being. But in the Bambara and the Fulani context, and you find this all across Africa, there's really a multiple dimension of cells that come together to create the person. So that's why the Ma, which is the person receptacle, is the receptacle, the container for the Maya, the people in the person. And so if you are familiar with ancient Egyptian cosmology and worldview, you know about the Ba, Ka, the Ren, et cetera, all these different aspects of the human being according to that tradition. And so it's the same thing in the Fulani and Bambara context. And so he continues, the human person, like the seed of a plant, evolves from an initial capital, which is his own potential. This potential will develop throughout the ascending phase of life according to the terrain and the circumstances encountered. The forces released by this potentiality are in perpetual motion, just like the cosmos itself. This is going to be very critical for what I'm going to say in the near future. So understand that we're not static beings. We're a multiplicity of beings in continuous and perpetual motion. Ma.Nkole, who I mentioned earlier, or God Master, created himself. Then he created 20 beings who together constituted the entire universe. But he realized that of these first 20 creatures, none was able to become his Kumanyon, therefore his interlocutor, someone able to converse with him. So he took a little piece of each of these 20 existing creatures, mixed them all together, and used them to create a 21st hybrid being, man, to whom he gave the name Ma. The first word, therefore, consisted of his own divine name. So the human being, the person, is a miniature God, according to the Fulani and Bambara tradition. And so y'all see where I'm going with this. To contain man, the all-in-one being, Ma.Nkole, devised a special body, vertical and symmetric, able to contain at one and the same time a piece of all the existing beings. This body, called Fari, symbolizes a sanctuary, where all beings are moving in a circle. I need y'all to write that down. Put in, your notes or type it, what he says here. This body called Fari symbolizes a sanctuary where all beings are moving in a circle. This is why tradition regards the body of man as the world in miniature, according to the expression Maye Dinye Merinin Deye, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, which means man is the universe in miniature. I just had a memoration dialogue for this man who you see on your screen. This is the late Kimbwadinde Kiabonseki Fukiao out of the Congo tradition. And you will find a similar attitude amongst the Bakongo people, another group of people who African Americans share ancestry with. The majority of them going to Brazil and I think Cuba. So in his 2003 text, I believe this is the Self-Healing Power and Therapy text, African society in general, and the Bantu in particular, perceive a human being as a what? A power, a phenomenon of perpetual veneration from conception to death, a perpetual reality that cannot be denied, and more so after death, because this physical reality becomes a spiritually living reality in words, deeds, experience, image, and an invisible radiating sun. As such, a pregnant woman is perceived as the carrier of a new and holy package full of what? Power and energy of Incole and Ingole. A continuation genetically of old radiations under new form. The entire community awaits for the coming of the package, the infant or the muntu to be born. The birth of a child is perceived as the rising of a living sun. This is where I get the subtitle, The Living Sons of Vitality, built off of this particular African cosmology, which you find in variations across the continent. In the upper world, Kuinseki, the death of a human being is perceived as the setting of a living sun in the lower world, Kuinpimba, the spiritual world or a world of ancestors, the community of the dead. And so even when we, I don't know how long we've been doing this in the States, but I know, within the past 20 and 30 years, when someone dies and you see the program for the funeral, you'll see sunrise in terms of their birth and sunset in terms of their death. And so that is a continuation of that particular, idea. And so the Congo cosmology, you see this graphic, and this is a circle that represents the, time and evolution of all things in the universe, including the human life cycle. And it goes counterclockwise. And those four circles you see are the four major stages of the life cycle. So starting at V1 at the bottom is the conceptualization stage. And then in V2 is the birthing stage, and is going through maturity at noontime, because this patterns the sun, or the apparent, because we know that the sun doesn't go around the earth. The earth goes around the sun. But if you're on earth and you're looking at the sky all day, it appears as if the sun is coming on from the east and setting in the west. And so that becomes the symbol of the life cycle of all things in the universe, but especially of the human being. So we as living sons go through birth, maturity at the V3, that's the height of our life, of our power and strength. And then you have the declining stage, going to V4, and that's sunset, the death of our lives. And so, but a lot of African people believe in reincarnation, so it's just a continuous cycle that goes on. So this is actually a spiral, because time is seen as cyclical in various African wisdom traditions. And so I talk about, because the totem that I argue, that I suggest for African American people, is the sun, that the sun be our totem. And so a totem is not an object of worship. It is simply an identifier to distinguish between other people. And sometimes those totems represent characteristics of the people themselves. And so it's no different than, like, if you have a football team and, you have the Chicago Bears, versus, well, the Redskins are changing their thing. Like the Buffalo Bills. No one worships these animals. They're just used as labels, identifiers to distinguish one team from another team. But the symbols embody the character of the people who are playing. So, if you ever, seen a bear or a buffalo, they represent power and strength. And so in the way that they charge, like, I don't know if y'all ever been charged by a buffalo, or seen how big they are. Football players are generally very big. And if they come at you, they come at you like, buffaloes and all this other kind of stuff. And so, for us, I'm suggesting that our totem be the sun. And this gives us an opportunity to discuss cosmology and a whole variety of things, even health, by discussing the origins of the universe based upon science. And so we know that we are here for, a variety of different situations that emerge from the Big Bang. But within that context, various stars emerged. And you had elements like hydrogen and helium, and I forgot what the third one is. Those are the light ones, in terms of elements on the periodic table. But all of the other elements that make up the human being emerges from a cooking process of stars and the dying of stars. And so it's because of the sun that you have life, in terms of the dying sun, because it creates the elements that create you. But also, when new suns emerge and those elements are, become planets, and in case of the earth becomes water and vegetation and bacteria and other microbes, and, fish and dinosaurs and amphibians and mammals and, apes, and then human beings and all this other kind of stuff. These are the kinds of discussions that you can have when you discuss, your totem and your relationship with these, in terms of history, and how important even the sun is to life in the current times. And so we want to be able to have scientific discussions with our youth. And this is one of the ways in which we can do that. And so, as we see here, all of these different ingredients, from oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, calcium, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur, chlorine, sodium, magnesium, iodine, iron, zinc, etc., all come from stars. And so, as the second image you see on the right from Carl Sagan, he says the nitrogen in our DNA, the calcium in our teeth, the iron in our blood, the carbon in our apple pies were made in the interiors of collapsing stars. We are made of stardust. So we were literally birthed by a sun, and we continue to live by a new sun, relatively speaking. And so, of course, we know the quote from Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson: not only do we live among the stars live within us. And so we can build a tradition based on these facts of history. And that's what that is the intention of having the sun as our totem for African Americans. Like, that is our sign and whatnot. And I designed this sun, this abstract sun, in a very unique and purposeful way. And so, as you can see, it is a spiral center. And so this, is building off of the Bantu Congo cosmology concept that we brought here to the United States. And then you see these individual flames around the circle. And so notice that the circle, or the unwinding of the spiral in the center, is going counterclockwise, like what we see in the African traditions. But notice that the sun has 12 flames. And so these 12 flames can represent, just the human being itself, as a ray of light, as a ray coming out of the sun. Or it can represent, in terms of the life cycle. So again, conceptualization, birth, maturity, death, and the cycles continue. But also, since it's 12 of the flames, that it represents time. And so in these African languages, the word for sun also represents time, moment in history. And so if you can look at this as a kind of a clock, and so it forces us to have a conversation about space-time. We can have conversations about relativity and all of this other kind of stuff. And then on the other end, have a conversation about, farming and the right amount of sunlight. And then we can have another conversation on building solar panels and empowering, sustainable communities and things of that nature. There's so many ways in which we can take this. But again, when we define ourselves, and we're saying that we are representations of the sun. So the sun can also be a symbol of the divine itself, as the most visible and powerful thing that we can see in the universe. And it becomes a symbol for that hidden power that is responsible for holding up and creation and its ongoing evolutions. And we see ourselves as these suns as well. And I'll show in another presentation how this word Incole becomes the word for all types of for animals like lions, alligators, and hawks. It's also a word for hawk in Bantu and Shina Intu in general. But it also is the cognate for the word heru, which is a word for sun, and it's a word for hawk in the ancient Egyptian language. This is the Bantu variation of this word. So you're seeing that I'm connecting all of these things into one particular concept. And so the Ba.Nkole are the eminent and powerful people. And the sun becomes a representation of that divine power manifested in us or expressed in us as sparks or flames of that greater, that infinite divine power. And then it speaks to that ongoing cycles of time. And then we can raise questions on, what happens to the personality and the soul. I won't try to answer that for everybody, but that's a conversation we can have, when we talk about this kind of identity. And so the word for sun in many Bantu languages is Ntangu. And so that's going to be the word that we use for sun. So we won't say just sun, we'll say Ntangu. And Ntangu has many variations. And so you'll see, like, for instance, on the right-hand side, on the left-hand side of your screen, you'll see in Chiluba Ntangu, which means a circle or field or a discipline in a different kind of incarnation, or Chitangu, which means a circle. In the Kikongo language, Ntangu means sun, time, moment, and day. In the isiZulu language, I should have bolded that, it has morphed into Ilanga, which means sun, sunshine, day, and daytime. And in Proto-Bantu, it's Tangu or Tangwa, sun. In ancient Kemet, it is Aten. We say Aten or Yitan, which is the disk of the sun or the moon to shine, to illuminate, and the word for light. And so you can see in terms of disk, and it's also a word for sun. So in Chiluba, it maintains that definition, but in Kikongo, they retain the sun definition. And in isiZulu, they maintain the sun and sunshine, meanings of the term. And you can see that that root also has to deal with, roundedness. And so you see this other variation in Chicam or Egyptian, TNN, a round topped box. And so this is the word Aten written in the hieroglyphs, or in Chitangu here, which is Ntangu in Kikongo. So that's what we call it, Ntangu. And so remember that, I'm for using African labels and not just simply creating English or Latin or Greek names for stuff that we're going to identify ourselves with. So this is why we're borrowing. We're not even borrowing. We're reclaiming the words and reappropriating them, to an appropriate usage, for African Americans. And so I mentioned again that this concept of the circle in relationship to human beings and man. So remember that the sun for us, this circle, not only represents just the regular sun, of course, in cyclical of time and the divine, but it also represents a human being. We are living suns. And so each of us are a living sun. And it's expressed itself in a spiral or circle fashion. And you'll find this correspondence in other African traditions. And so, I'm still trying to keep this in an alignment with our heritage. So among the Dogon, when you read the Pale Fox, it says on the right-hand side, man from spiral, evolution. It is said inside the pole, which is the symbol of the smallest thing, is an even smaller thing, which is life. Life developed as at the same time as its means of support, made of the blended elements, just like what you saw in the Bambara and the Fulani, in terms of that mixture of the blended elements of existence, and how we are, when we speed this up or when we have this discussion in terms of the elements that make up our bodies and things, they are blended elements. This development worked on the principle of a motion turning in a conical spiral. It is said when life increases, it increases by whirling, which is a repetition of Amma's first act, because that imitates how Amma came out of the egg of the world. And what you see on the left-hand side is an abstraction of this whirling, this life principle. And this is what they call among the Dogon the pre-configuration of a human being. So this has to deal with human beings. This is a human being, an abstract representation of the human being, this whirling spiral. And it's the concept of life. So just like when we go back here to our symbol here, this spiral is a representation of life, the life cycle. And so just like in the Congo, you see the same thing all the way over there, way back in Mali amongst the Dogon, that this concept of the spiral of the circle represents the principle of life in motion. And there are more that I can go into, but I don't want to be here all night. That's why I'm writing the book. And so, again, I'll repeat what Amadal Hapati Ba said in the text earlier. To contain man, the all-in-one being, Ba.Nkole, devised a special body, vertical and symmetrical, able to contain at one and the same time a piece of all the existing beings. This body, called Fari, symbolizes a sanctuary where all beings are moving in a circle. This is why tradition regards the body of man as the world in miniature, according to the expression, which means man is the universe in miniature. So we go to Malidoma Some, the Dagara people in Burkina Faso. Same thought. So we went from Congo to Mali to Burkina Faso. All human beings are circles. He starts off the sentence. All human beings are circles. Our setting part represents the coolness of water. It provides the peace of the body and the soul and bridges the gap between how we look on the outside and how we are on the inside. It brings us to our family, the village, and the community. It makes us many. The God of the setting side is the God of the water we drink and the water that quenches our thirst. And this is from his text of Water and the Spirit, page 199. So again, this representation of man and the human being is seen as a circle. And so you see these cosmic wheels. This is the Dagara cosmological wheel on the left-hand side, again in this circle spiral. This is the Yoruba cosmological wheel in Ifa on the right-hand side. So now we're in Nigeria on it. And so this is a new representation that kind of combines the Congo and the Voodoo order. So there's a modern order called the Dambala New African Voodoo Ancestral Order. And so you see the same, kind of crossroads that you find in Congo, and then the circle of, infinity. And that's what you see the Ouroboros in terms of the snake eating his tail. Same thing. You see the Aristotle's law of opposites. It's still the same thing. Even though these are squares, it's still 360 degrees, whether it's a square or a circle. And it's these law of opposites and things. It's the same conceptualization everywhere. We go to the Dogon, who we just mentioned earlier. They too have these elements spinning in a circle. This is Amma. This is a representation of Amma, of God and the universe itself. And it's called the Dogon womb of all signs. And so this is the Seir cosmograph. And so this image represents the cosmogony of the Seir people found in Senegal, the Gambia, and Mauritania. It depicts their representation of the universe rooted in Seir religion and cosmology. This is adapted from Henry Gravrand, The Seir Civilization, in Pongu, Volume 2. It depicts the tree worlds, the invisible worlds, the terrestrial world, and the nocturnal world. And so even though this is in diamond form, it still really kind of represents what we see in the other cosmologies, because they're always broken up into two spheres. I mean, in two halves. You have the diurnal world and then the nocturnal world, which is the ancestral world, which is at the bottom. And so the world of the living is on the top and the world of the ancestors is on the bottom. And you see that whether you're in the Yoruba use the image of a calabash, and they break it down the same way as they do. And so we go to the Songoe people, and they too represent, the cosmology as a circle and the interworking of these particular elements. So you have Aru, which is man, and then Orkoi, which is God, and then Goy, Janawe, which are the tools of production, and Woi, woman. And so all of these things make a society, make a cosmos in terms of divine, masculine, and feminine agencies of production, and of course God, the sustainer, the action generating principle, which makes all of this happen. And so they continue with their own cosmographs, and this is a synthesis in terms of the human being. So the human being for them is not within a circular context, but it's still like in this diamond. It's the universe, spirit, and matter. It's a synthesis, in the balance between spirit and matter. And so self-knowledge is dealing with spirit, matter, and the synthesis of the knowledge of the universe. And so what I'm trying to show here is that African people, from the places where we come from, they represent themselves in these kind of cosmographs and these spiral circles and even triangular, contexts. And so closing up here, and I just wanted to, again, reemphasize that the suggested name, the previous one was Bakala. The new name I'm suggesting is Incole or Nkole. And the plural of that is the Ba.Nkole or Nkole. So that would be our ethnicity name. So like if we're referring to like a Mexican or an Italian or a Yoruba or a Wolof or a Amazulu or a Bakongo or Mukongo, a Baganda person, these are all ethnic names for a group of people. And so the Incole, Nkola, Ba.Nkole, Nkola is the ethnic name, the suggested ethnic name for who we currently now call African Americans. This would be our African name, the name that speaks more to who we are, our heritage. And there's more that I can show, and how all of this connects and what we can do with this identity. But again, that's the whole purpose of the book. And so they would take too long to try to do a lecture on it. And so when we talk about our language would be Chi-Nkole or Chi-Nkola or Ki-Nkola, like when you say Kiswahili or Chiluba. These are words, these are prefixes for mouth or tongue or language. And so whatever, the way that we speak, they would call it African American Vernacular English, or they would call it Ebonics. but we call it Chi-Nkole, Ki-Nkole. And then again, our totem is Ntangu, which is the sun. And, our our previous conversation on developing an African American religion, I have suggested the name Bolingo or Malinga, which means love. And, so you'll be hearing me talk about that in the future. And then, a suggested national anthem. And I know everybody's not going to agree with this, but my suggestion is Most Def Umi Says, shine your light on the world. Now, when it comes to the Ba.Nkole meaning eminent or powerful people, and our representation of that power being the sun, we have to realize that African Americans have been identifying with the sun in various different songs. And what I'm doing is collecting songs by African Americans that are in relationship to a sun or a star of somewhat. And so I don't know if everyone can see the names that I have on the screen, but I forgot who's the name of the original, but this is a remix here. This is from New Eurekan Soul. I Am the Black Gold of the Sun, the 4 Hero mix. So some of these, y'all can look up on YouTube and hear the songs. But, Victor Duplat out of Philadelphia, Morena remix. Victor Duplat again, I See the Sun. When you listen to these songs, you'll get a better sense of what I'm talking about. So, this relationship between the sun is not arbitrary. What I'm seeing is that that we already have a history of identifying ourselves with the sun, and it even comes out in our music. And so there's a group out of DC, I think they live in Atlanta now, it's Fertile Ground. So you have Black Sunshine. And then Fertile Ground again, Star People. There's a man by the name of Africa Oakland called Kissed by the Sun. Then, of course, y'all should all know Sun Ra, the great, jazz artist and band. The sun, he's all cosmic in space and all this other kind of stuff. So that's all his songs and all the albums. But these three stick out: the Sun Song, and Astro Black, and Where There Is No Sun. Then you have John Coltrane, Sunship. Then you have Poor Righteous Teachers, Easy Star. Then you have Old Dirty Bastard, Sons of Man, and Earth, Wind, and Fire, Shining Star. And remember that Earth, Wind, and Fire, they got the name from the Earth, Wind, and Fire, Shining Star. So we can put them on there twice. You have another group called Dark Sunriders, and there's a song called Dark Sunriders. You have India Arie, Brown Skin. You have Funk Dubious. They're really Mexicans, but it's hip hop, and they're ciphering of a lot of the Black cultural relationship to the sun. But Mexicans, they have a relationship to the sun and identify with that as well too. So I won't take nothing away from them. But if you ever hear Funk Dubious group out of Los Angeles, Brothers Doobie, Rock On, that's an honorable mention that I have there. You have Stevie Wonder, A Place in the Sun. Nina Simone, Here Comes the Sun. You have High Tech featuring Common, song called Sun God. You have the OJs, Sunshine. And I put not really, but honorable mention. Then you have Harry Belafonte, Island of the Sun. And then a beautiful song by Georgia and Muldrow called Child of the Sun. So when you kind of listen to these songs, you get this sense, this culturalness in association with the sun itself. And so again, that's why we adopt the sun, as a representation of power. And then, so now we have to have a discussion. And I don't want us to have a Bible, but, and also for all of y'all who, of course, I'm missing some songs, but, if y'all think of some sun songs by African American artists or whatnot, please send it to me and I'll add it to my list because I'm going to put it in the book. Uh, but anyway, again, so hopefully, again, there's more, and again, that's why I'm updating the book, and so it's going to be it's going to be similar but drastically kind of different in a way than the first incarnation from the Bakala of North America. So again, it'll be a collector's item, but a lot has changed. I learned a lot, and I've solidified it in this. So now it's just a matter of seeing, do y'all agree with this? Is this something that y'all can be down with? And if so, it's just a matter of this. We don't need to raise money. You just got to use it. Refer to yourself, especially you who are artists in terms of musical artists. Those of you who are visual artists, just use the term, refer to yourself as such. And when we the next step is to institutionalize the concept. And then once it, of course, we're going to have some resistance because, we're just Black people. We just like resisting, we want to debate everything. And so I'm prepared for the debates, and I want to hold classes and things of that nature to expand it. But again, I'm gonna wait till the book comes out. And let me stop sharing on that screen. So again, so it's just a matter of do y'all tell me what y'all like, and so or dislike. And so we've been on for 2 hours. I'll go no later than, what time is it? 10:30. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share the link in the chat. And so for those who have been listening and want to voice your opinion on what was said, or if you have any questions, and you can ask questions in the chat if you don't want to come live. I'm putting the link in the chat, so it's going to show up on the asarimhotep on Facebook, and it should show up in the general chat on the YouTube. So, which I don't see. Let me make sure. Let me go. See guest. If they invite a guest, let me clipboard. And so, oh no, it did post. Never mind. So, so yeah. So, if you want to join the chat, and again, you don't have to show your face if you don't feel like it. Click on the link and voice your opinion. So if you rock with it, if you don't rock with it, what are your cares and concern? I want to keep all of this in mind as I'm articulating this, because this allows me to kind of anticipate the cares and concerns of our people when I'm bringing this information to the public. So I really would like your feedback, and I have tough skin. So if y'all just ain't feeling this at all, I will not be hurt, by it. So if you have any questions or comments, again, the link is in the chat, and or you can ask it in the chat. And let me see. Let's see. We are people. People. My mom made that song. Ladasha Wright says, Earth, Wind, and Fire. I assume we are people of the mighty, mighty people of the sun. My mom made that song our family anthem. Indeed. So I'm going to have to put that. I'm going to have to go back, again, because I was reading. I couldn't read all the chat. So I'll have to go back when this is all said and done and kind of review some of your song suggestions. And let's see. Someone has come in, so let me add them in. Juan Love, peace and blessings. Thank you for joining the panel. What is your opinion about what was presented?
Well, peace, brother Asar. My opinion on it, man, is it was brilliant, and I appreciate it, man. Like, very, very thought out. You vetted all the source material. I can tell. Uh, the methodology was definitely on point. Um, and just the finality of the name that you came up with, man. It was dope how you did that. So my question would be, because I can go with it, of course, that makes more sense. Ba.Nkole, of course, makes more sense than just, I mean, as you explained, man, makes more sense than just saying African American or black or one of these other names that other people have given to us, right? My question would be, because I did watch the entirety of the presentation.
All right.
How would, outside of sharing this to my friends and family, uh, how would you say that? How would you? What would you say would be a simple way to just put my friends and family up on this concept without them having to go through the whole presentation as I just did?
No problem. No problem. And I see you on the line, BK Trainer, and I'll bring you in just a second. Uh, as I just stated, it's for those who agree with it. It's really up to you just to use it and refer to yourself as such. And so, if you are an artist or an author, for example, or a filmmaker, like you can include it in your artistry, in your research, and things of that nature. Also, I'm writing a text, and so as I stated from the beginning, I wrote a text in 2009 called the Bakala of North America, the Living Sons of Vitality, and the so this is what I presented here is just kind of an update to that, and so I'm abandoning the suggestion on Bakala. There's just going to be a whole bunch of stuff that changes from there. So what we'll have in the near future, hopefully in 2021, is an actual text that you can refer them to. And it'll be a little bit more expansive. And then that way we can have, book clubs, conversations, and it's going to take a lot. And so it's just going to require a, a lot of stuff working in sync, to get the word out and to kind of fill the pulse. And so, we also have a certain amount of expectation that we should have as well. And that is that, think about like the elders, they may or may not rock with it. This is really
Right.
for our children and their children's children, going forward. And so what has to happen is the institutionalization, of it. And so, there's many things that I'm thinking about that's just in my head on how we can implement this and introduce. But
Yeah, yeah.
this conversation, of course, this is a 2 hour, but some people they won't read the book. They'd rather listen to something like this. And then of course I can do once I have the book out, and of course, and we'll have more discussions about this. Uh these are just I'm trying to hit it and make sure that for the different types of personalities and the way that people like to receive information, that it is there for them. Because a lot of people ain't going to read the book, but they'll listen to or watch a video. Some people may watch a video, but then not watch a whole 2 hour video. So we'll have to have something that's, 15, 20 minutes, for those type of people. I have to make some videos or something like that really kind of, then, again, creative, do a film where like the major themes are incorporated. It has to get into the culture. And so this is just, my premiering of the concept and trying to get feedback. So
Gotcha. Well, I appreciate the I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, man, I really appreciated and enjoyed the presentation. And enjoyed you taking my my call in. So I don't want to hold up, everybody else who wants to get in.
No problem. Alrighty, man. I
So yeah,
appreciate you
peace,
coming
brother.
on.
Peace, brother. Yes, sir. I'm gonna
All
continue
right.
to watch, man. But I'm gonna get up off here and let everybody else jump on in.
No problem. I appreciate you. Thank you
All right.
for coming in. All right, peace.
Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna bring in BK Trainer, and I see Thought Evoker, and you'll be next. Peace and blessings, BK Trainer. Thank you for joining.
Peace, brother. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. I'm
sorry.
Go ahead.
Nah, you pretty much answered the question that the brother just asked. That's what I was going to ask. So you pretty much answered it. But what I'll say is that I've been looking through your book now for the past maybe 5-6 years. The one on Bakala, the North America, the Living Sons of Vitality. It's a powerful book, man. It really is. I actually been using it a lot, just the words with different things, and doing the work I do, even in codes that I use in terms of like using my technology. It's just to get it into my mindset. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, it's a powerful book, man, and I'm gonna order the book you're gonna have coming out soon. And but I think that one of the things that you touch on a lot that I like is the I guess it's the 6. Is it the 6 or it's the 9 that you go over? Interdependence, transformation. Yeah, that is real key, because what I get from most of this is that just kind of reclaiming who you already are, and also reconnecting and being authentic with each other.
Yeah.
Like,
and see, and that's the key to what I was doing here. It is not. I'm not trying to create something out of the blue that's foreign to us. Like those precepts and reoccurring themes that you just mentioned, that's coming from Baba Dr. Wade Nobles.
Yes.
And so these are ideas and things that we already know and agree with. And so what's missing is us institutionalizing those things, and just putting it into a worldview and a context that everyone can identify as us, and we use it to build ourselves, our economy. Because just like what I mentioned in the text coming from Dr. Amos Wilson, Blueprint for Black Power, he has a whole chapter on culture being the basis of power.
Right.
And so if we develop these ideas, we can utilize this to build our economy and to build ourselves up, and maybe be an inspiration for others of the diaspora to do the same thing in their own vision, with their own history. Go ahead.
Question: when you say culture, you're referencing like cosmology, right? Like getting back to.
Well, that's an aspect of it.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So again, the cosmology piece is to show us how we relate to the universe itself.
Yes, exactly.
And so we have all kinds of science that informs us about what has happened in the past and how we relate to planets and the laws of physics and all of that. And all we have to do is take that information and get creative with it and create stories to teach our children and to build off of that, because that's what our ancestors did. Whatever was the knowledge of that time, that's what they used to create a worldview. And later they were able to use that in a way that served whatever, you know, issues that they had at that time. And so we have a little bit more understanding of the universe itself, you know, now than then. And so this is something that are constantly, you know, being updated. But, you know, that's why I use that sun in terms of the dying sun and the elements. And so we're going to have a discussion tomorrow. Excuse me 1 second. Let me find the flyer real quick.
Okay.
And
wow,
it's going to be on how to modernize worshiping the gods in a way that makes sense. An open discussion about properly defining what a god is and how we can modernize the concept of worshiping the gods without being spooky. And so you already got some of that tonight in terms of the definition, but I'll be repeating it tomorrow, but put it in a different context. And we'll see, like, we can utilize our culture to really teach and build, because if you understand, for example, and here's a preview of tomorrow, if you understand that all of these elements in the periodic table exist in you,
right,
and you need it to survive, then now we can have a discussion upon diet and health.
right.
And so if you understand what a god is as defined as what I showed earlier in the conversation, again, I'll repeat it tomorrow, you'll see that your body is made up of hundreds of thousands of gods, and they require certain sacrifices. And those sacrifices, those offerings, you know, have certain elements and nutrients that your body, your temple, we keep saying our body's a temple, and a shrine in a temple is what the houses gods in the traditional sense. So I'm putting it in a way that is not spooky, that we can modernize to be able to teach our children in a way that, you know, we're using these as personifications and metaphors to teach them real science about life that's going to affect them, you know, in a very serious way. So, you know, that'll be on tomorrow. But again, I'm just, you know, helping us or trying to move us in a way where we can think differently, but more so that we add value to ourselves. And so that's ultimately what it is. So once we start looking at each other as valuable, then a lot of stuff will change, because you got to see yourself as powerful, as valuable and things of this nature, because you won't accept certain things from society, from other people, because you know your worth.
Right. And trying to build up the courage to do that.
Yes. Indeed.
You know what I mean? Like try to get your mindset where you're not having this poverty or lack of mindset. You know, because I know that's what a lot of our people suffer from, is that poverty mindset. I'm not just talking about money, but just the ability to have the courage to create.
Exactly.
You know.
Yes. For ourselves.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like I want to get this education. I want to further something. Like what you've done.
Yeah.
You further information that was, you know, from the great scholars. You furthered it with these books. You know what I mean? Your lectures are real long sometimes. I'm like, I gotta catch, brother. I gotta watch these in parts.
Right.
But they're always on point and powerful. So salute, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. Thank you for joining. I'm gonna get some of these other speakers.
No problem, brother.
So I'm not trying to kick you out, but I'm gonna remove you from the thing. But thanks again for your comment and support.
Respect, man. Peace.
Peace. So I'm gonna do two at a time now. So I'm gonna add Thought Provoker, and I'm gonna add Prince, and I see you, Rasta Josiah and Naja. So I'll get you two later. So I'll add these two, and welcome both of you.
Yeah, can you hear me? Am I clear?
Yes, yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, thanks.
All right. Who's speaking right now? Who was that?
That was me, Prince, out of
Okay,
Cincinnati,
okay, okay.
Ohio.
Peace, peace. And hold on one second. Thought Evoker, are you there?
Yeah, what's going
Okay,
on?
no problem, no problem. I'll start with Prince and then I'm gonna go to you. Just want to make sure that your mic was working. All right, go ahead.
Yo, this is just really great and super inspiring. I gotta say, none the least. I don't really like have necessarily like a question, but I
Uh-huh.
just had some kind of connections between like what it is that you're talking about and just some of the
Mm-hmm.
work that I do here in my city in Cincinnati and working with youth. So like I tell traditional African mythologies for students a lot of times, and I'm
Okay.
also in grad school too. So I'm a PhD student, and so this has been hold this talk around like abolitionist education and how to teach to anti-blackness, and it's kind of like I've been running up against a pedagogical wall. You know what I mean? Because like
Mm-hmm.
the language by which we like try to talk about Black mattering isn't really in line with the continuity of the African memory and things like that. And so
Yes.
I just really appreciate like the depth, you know what I mean, that you provided to that. And I couldn't help but recognize in a lot of the things that you were saying, especially about like the the evolution, right, of the African memory in these kind of colonial contexts. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and to this is old. He passed away. His name is Cedric Robertson. He is like
Okay.
a Black radical thought kind of leader of a guy, but he wrote this book that is really informing a lot of what I'm doing here in Cincinnati. But yeah, it's just this really interesting. Like he basically says, like African memory informs our liberation struggles, right? Here within
Mm-hmm.
these colonial contexts that kind of created a template for the rest of the world. So, like I said, I don't really have a question. I don't know if I'm just trying to like poly with somebody right now, but I just really appreciate the depth, especially for someone like me. Um,
Mm-hmm.
my parents are Gullah Geechees, right? So, there's
Mm-hmm.
that whole thing in that as well. It's just a
Okay.
great way, you're just doing a great job, yo. Like you're bringing us home, you know what I mean? And yeah, I just bought your book tonight. I just
Uh,
passed it on to a couple of my friends in my cohort. I was like, yo, we got to rap about this like tomorrow. So I'm really looking forward to these conversations. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm just really interested though in seeing like how this name for ourselves, right, can also be a liberatory power for
mhm.
ourselves, and really try to dismantle some of these systems of oppression that I think Cedric Robinson really, really points to a lot. I don't know if you ever heard of him. I'll be glad to email
Yeah.
you whatever. But yeah, I just want to say thanks, bro. I'm not trying to take up no
Mhm.
time, but I'm
All
just
right.
thoroughly ecstatic. So thanks for providing all this depth.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you. Thank you very much. All right, we go to Thought Evoker.
Yo, man, this is like one of my favorite lectures by you. One of my favorite
Mm,
lectures, period. Especially, yeah, I gotta watch the full thing. I came in
mhm,
a little halfway because yeah, I was busy and but I'm
mhm,
glad I was able to catch it. Especially all the parts on linguistics and
mhm,
cosmology, especially that's like my
mhm,
major area of research. And it really seems like
mhm,
you're building off of what Prince was saying. Seems like you're transmuting Black matters to Black
mhm.
manifestation. Period. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's sick, dude. Um, yeah, and in terms of, I guess, oh yeah, definitely, I'm gonna send you an email sometime soon. But I'm trying to keep focus in my personal research, and I knew you'll be doing a
Uh-huh.
presentation along these lines, and yeah, this was definitely it.
Mhm,
In terms of what I've been waiting for to hear your thoughts on and your knowledge. But basically, I guess in terms of keeping it simple, in terms of a question, in terms of your personal definitions and perceptions on theology and philosophy, would you say that God's a synonym to your definition of gods is principles, like universal principles?
in well, I wouldn't say universal principles in the collective sense. There, how should I say this? When I talk about the word gods for God in these languages, that's one context. Like if there's a word for God in this language, what is the root of that word, and what are they trying to say when they refer to God? So that's one thing. Then there's, okay, outside of the linguistics, what do the gods represent? That's a different layer. That's a different topic of discussion. And so when, in the way that I addressed it in this presentation, I'm looking at the language. And so I'm looking at all of these different variations of the exact same word. And so there's a larger conversation on historical comparative linguistics, family relationships in terms of language, cognates, sound laws and all of that. I didn't get too deep because I've done that in 100 presentations already on these terms. So, and it's in the Illusion Volume 2 book. So y'all can go there and see all of that good stuff. And so, but I just wanted to show how it is manifested in these languages and just to show that it's present. So even though I'm picking one term from one language, this term exists in all of these languages and is used in a similar or same way. So that, we don't have to feel, because, I'm kind of anticipating somebody saying that we're not those people. Why do we have to take a word from that language? And I'm saying that it's not an issue of taking, something from and we're trying to be those people. This word exists in all of these different languages. And so wherever our ancestry comes from, these are all our heritage. So I may use, I use the Chiluba word for the name, but that word is in a number of languages. But I use Kikongo for the word for sun. And we may go to Wolof for another word for something, and this is how you use that kind of Pan-African thing to kind of inform, since we don't have a primary language. And just one day we may even adopt an African language as our primary language, maybe like Kiswahili, that be the official African American language, whatever. But yeah, I know I probably went on a tangent.
Would you say that? I mean, would you say maybe forces? Would that be a better synonym, or in terms of yeah?
So so a god is simply an action generating principle, or force.
Yeah,
that's
completely agree.
It's the cause of something moving or happening
beyond the physical. Yeah.
I mean, well, it has to be the physical, because only physical things move.
Yeah.
So whatever the movement is in existence, that is a deity. But it can be an invisible force, or it can be a physical thing.
Yeah.
So that's why, like tomorrow, I'm gonna be talking about microbes in the body. Microbes, by African definitions, are gods. But so is the human being. A king is a god, a firefighter, somebody who has authority, power to make something happen, a president. So we take the spookism out of the concept. So Incole can mean a eminent or powerful person, but it can also mean the divine, the infinite divine. Because it has to deal with agency, the ability to make something happen or to create.
Yeah, that's why I really like the word spirit or spirits, because it kind of de-theologizes the notion, and it's like a perfect synonym that it's definitely it's theologically leaning, but it's a kind of depersonalized way, because gods or gods tend to have a personalized attribute. And then, of course, in the West, is like heavily dominated by monotheistic thought, and God is always associated with the one or the all. And I mean, I personally tend to use God in that context, but I totally am with the whole notion of gods in your definition. I have the same attitude. But then I think, well, what are your thoughts? I guess maybe last thought in terms of, I guess the notion of a cosmic principle or force, like a singularity behind the many spirits or many gods, many forces. Do you see things like that? There's a cosmic singularity behind that.
Well, when referencing the supreme being, I tend to agree with those African traditions that argue that, to use the phraseology of Professor James Smalls, he would say that God is everything and all things at once.
Totally, man.
And as I've discussed in Illusion Volume 2, that is the common attitude in many African traditions. It's simply existence itself. It's everything. And so that's what, my leaning. So it's not simply just an initial first cause per se. It is the cause and product. It is
Absolutely.
everything, and so, hopefully I'm making sense, but that's the general understanding from what I've been able to glean from conversations and through reading literature about the vast majority, or at least there's documentation in terms of their conceptualization of the divine, outside of the influence of Islam and Christianity, which then there's God, the entity, and then there's creation separate over here. And that doesn't seem to be the consensus on the continent of Africa regarding.
We totally 100% agree. And personally, I think all religions, all traditions actually all agree upon this, but the kind of the filter of human beings have detached that kind of, because I like studying different religions around the world, like they all do teach that in terms, like there is a beginning aspect of the all, but the all also continues to exist through creation. And in terms of anyways, I mean, this could be an endless conversation. But I guess if you're down with one last thing in terms of how much is there, like kind of breaking down like 8 levels of principles in African traditions? Is there anything that kind of pops out with you in terms of 8 levels? Because everything began 0, 1, 2, the 2 became 4, and then the 4 became 8. We know that Ifa's got the 16, but anything 8 offhand?
I don't know necessarily about an 8. I know the Dogon and Ancient Egyptian have, there's the 8 Nomo for the Dogon, and then the 8, the Ogdoad. Well, that's that's the 8 Ogdoad, or is it the 9? No, there's 2 different ones. There's one for 9, and there's one that has 8 in terms of their creation story. But all I can say is, 1, that's a whole different conversation, and 2, is really the African counting system, the 2n, 2 to the power of n system. And what's his name? Eglash, I forgot his first name, who writes about African mathematics. When you read his stuff, a lot of this stuff will start to make sense in terms of the binary systems and the 2n counting system. So read Eglash, and also read Dr. Charles S. Finch, Star of Deep Beginnings.
Star of Deep Beginnings.
Yes. And he has a whole section on African mathematics and the 2n counting system, and you'll see that is kind of embedded in the culture, and you see that manifested in different ways across the country.
That
But
is
I
so
appreciate.
helpful, man.
You're welcome. You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
I appreciate you
Really appreciate you,
calling
man.
in, and you have a good event. Thank
Keep
you
on
again for your
shining, bro.
feedback. Thank you. Thank you. All righty. Going to remove him, and I'm going to add the last. I'm going to add you last three. So Naja, Brother Sanjetti, and Rasta Josiah. You keep coming in and out. Hopefully your connection's good. Um, I'm gonna
Greetings.
start off with Naja, and I'm gonna start off, then go to Rasta, and then Sanjetti since he came in last. So, peace, Naja.
Peace, Asar. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, I can.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate
You're
all
welcome.
your scholarship and just the work that you're doing. I just wanted to come on and say I definitely am in agreement with where you're going with this. And
Mm,
I'm definitely on board. One thing I was just going to bring up was
okay.
when you mentioned the names of artists, songs, there's also Shabaka Hutchins with Sons of Kemet. And
Mm,
I love the work that he's putting forth because I feel like it's um it's following a lot of the same line that you're talking about with
mm,
just creating something new, not in a sense
mm,
of brand new like reinventing
mm,
the wheel, but just the idea that um, we have this re-memory and we are trying to
mm,
use that to bring ourselves to this understanding and just proper identity. And he talks about that continuum in African history, how they see time and ancestor worship, as some people call it, as this circular continuum. So I just thought that was really important. And then there's other groups like Sons of Light used to be the boys when
mm.
they were younger.
Yeah.
So they're doing great things over there too. I myself am a writer and a poet, so I'm very interested in figuring out ways to bring this into art, like you said, and
Mhm.
so I'm here for it. I'm listening, and that's pretty much it. I'm gonna leave it to you scholars, and I'm gonna sit back and listen.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Again, it's for the people. So I look forward to seeing how the people internalize it and express it in their own,
Yeah.
ways. And so that's the point. And that's the only way that it's going to become part of the culture
Mhm.
itself.
Right.
But I appreciate it. And again, anyone who has, names along the lines of of songs of African Americans and the Sun, please send them to me or post them in the comment section if you don't have my email or not friends with me on Facebook or whatever. Uh, so I can make a list, and just show that, again, the whole purpose. Well, not the whole purpose. One of the things that I wanted to make sure is that, again, that I'm not trying to impose something on us as a people, that stuff that seems foreign, like we're already utilizing and making these associations. What I'm trying to do is gather that knowledge and institutionalize that so that we can build institutions and and do some great things with our lives and culture. So I appreciate your calling in and feedback, and I will, again, I'm going to get Rasta in here. Uh, Peace, Rasta Josiah.
Hello?
Peace, peace. You there?
Greetings. How you doing,
Greetings.
brother?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. And yourself?
Hey, yeah, I just want to say I came at probably the last 30 minutes. I didn't even know you had a live stream, but I really enjoyed the information that you were presenting. To me, I think this is common sense that we should really move on to something new like this. I mean, yeah, I agree with you, like just so basically what you're saying is we should uh you know, I guess refer to each other as what is it, Ba.Nkole,
Yes,
Ba.Nkole,
Ba.Nkole or Ba.Nkole.
son people. Um, yeah, I mean, and I'm trying to remember because like I said, I came at the very end. I'm gonna rewatch the whole thing once you
Hmm.
finish, but yeah, I'm looking forward to the book, man, because I'm a student. I'm learning, and I think you've seen me before on Facebook. I don't know if you recognize this name, but I've been a huge
I
supporter of
probably
your work
yes,
for a
yes,
long time.
yes. Indeed, indeed. I appreciate it. Thank you, and I look forward to your feedback after watching the whole thing. And so again, y'all continue, even criticize. Like I want criticisms too, because I want to be able to, um, address that, and maybe y'all may come up with something that I haven't considered and have to, you know, really, really kind of think deeply about. But I appreciate all the feedback, and I appreciate your commentary, good brother.
Oh, you're welcome, and
All
thank you for
right,
letting me speak.
no problem, no problem. And lastly, good brother Sunjetti, how you doing?
Right.
You're on mute. Oh, there you
All
go.
right. So, I caught the last parts of the
Mhm.
presentation, but, we've been talking about this
Yeah.
stuff since we met, you know, a long time ago. So, I'm just, happy to see, you know, finally like presenting it, with more fuller thought, laid out. I still got my Bakala of North America book right here.
Appreciate it.
Bakala.
Ancient history, collector's item.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, I always thought it was, I thought it was better, or it removes a lot of ambiguity in regards to,
Mhm.
well, what do we call ourselves? Uh,
Yeah.
the controversy around, okay, what's the origin of the name Africa? There's always this mystery behind it.
Hmm.
And we have enough research to know now that more than likely it comes from the Berber language,
Hmm.
we call it. So we got that, and then we have the situation in history where Romans are conquering the area of modern day Tunisia and the adjacent regions and naming it after the people that conquered it. Later on, it becomes the name of the entire region we call continent. Uh, and then we get into the arguments of, well, Europeans gave us that name, and it's just back and forth and all of kind of stuff. And it's like, well, I remember in our conversations way back then, I think we
Hmm.
felt 20. But it's is it the back and forth, and why don't we just come up with something that we don't have to do guesswork with? We know where it
Yes,
comes from.
exactly.
At that time was Bakala, and looking at these different word derivatives or word forming elements like kala,
Hmm.
and ka, and how it's related to we have Kemetic uh, near the root, but then we have it in Bantu, etc. So
Hmm.
it's like a Pan African, generated term
Hmm.
that we know exactly where everything is step by step.
Yeah.
We can even give honor to Sheikh Anta Diop and other
Hmm.
religious ancestors and current elders who do that linguistic work and tell us you have to have that sense of like the culture unity of Black Africa, just using
Hmm.
title sake work, and really connecting us together. And still, we can have our individual group identities, but the individual group identities is only valuable in relationship to a greater whole.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So, that's where I see the spirit of coming up with this term, Bakala, and then evolving into Ba.Nkole or Ba.Kala. You know, uh,
Hmm.
again, you see the development. Again, there's
Yeah.
no difference. We have the first edition, and then
Hmm.
this conversation, and then other conversations that have come from this another publication. Uh,
Hmm.
And I like how the idea that, you know, African Americans, we have our own identity. And, you know, we should be proud of that identity. But that identity is still has a relationship to the greater African um, uh, silly, if you will. Some people say we like to use our African terms. So in Kiswahili, the word silly meaning soul, seed, core, spirit, the originating spirit of a thing.
Yeah.
And we maintain
And
that.
and that'll be a dialectical variation of the same term.
Yeah,
But I won't get into that. But that's what I mean. It's no matter what word we use if we're using this word, it's everywhere, and it's just pronounced differently due to the sound change. I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, you know, on the same level, and you know, just developing over the past little more than a decade. You know, you know, looking at your development, looking at how, you know, I've developed, you know, just using African languages and just getting that intellectual and emotional, you know, connection with the cultures, you know. And when you have that uh that dual thrust, you know, it opens up a lot of doors to evidence. Let's call it evidence-based creativity.
Yeah.
Evidence-based creativity. You know, so we're going through these steps, and just going back to, you know, your publications. You know, you went through the steps. You know, you went through understanding, like Bloom's taxonomy kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, you know, information, understanding, which is the second level. You know, then analysis. How do we take things apart? You know, what are the differences? And then now from there, okay, let's look at how these things related after we understand what makes them unique. Now, how do they relate? And then from there, okay, now let's make an assessment. How do these parts work together, you know, and what are the specialities? And then we can get into creativity. And this is where the research comes in. I like the one of the I think 2-3 callers back, they were talking about the concept of, you know, God, if you will.
Yeah.
And you're saying God is everything and everywhere, you know, all at once, right? And, you know, for us, you know, God is existence as part of it, as one of the things that God is for us. Now, some of us don't like the word God because we've associated exclusively with Europeans. And, you know, I get it, we get it. You know, I know you've done more research on the African origin of the word God, but you know, I like Kepler. You know, and Kepler, many of you know, is presented as a beetle in Kemetic iconography, and that word is again all over Africa. I know in Illusion Volume 1, you have a section speaking about, you know, Kepler. You know, you have it in Proto-Western Sudanic. You have it the P as one of the word forming elements, not necessarily a root, but a word forming element, as like Pa or P, I think, meaning like to fly, you know. And then in you have like Mande, so I think it's like Pa. Again, meaning it's like move to fly to flap. So, you know, so Kepler, you know, as a verb to be, and then it's now, you know, as existence. But that really just goes to show how you can take the term that you find commonly in Kemet, and then you find it all over Africa, and then bring it full circle. That's where we have Ba.Nkole.
And I was just about to say, Incole is also cognate with Kepler. And so I don't know if you saw, I know you said you came in later, but I had a slide that has, let me see. Yeah, I had a slide that had the names. I put God equals action generating principle. Then I had nature, you know, Incole and Quelle, Maweja, Orisha. I had Kepper. I had Mboli, Mwari. Like Mboli's name is Kepper without the K or the K prefix, on the root. It's Mwari, Mwezi, Azi. It's all different variations. They're all the same word because they come from a root meaning to go, to propagate forward. And then it goes to expressing words for creation, to do, to act. And then it, depending on the prefix or suffix of the root, it goes into, in linguistics, we talk about a word matrix. And so you have a core meaning, and then you have a matrix of polysemous terms that are built off of that root. And so, in one direction, you have to fly, to flutter, because the root means to go. But in another direction, it means to do or to act. And matter of fact, in African languages, the word to go is also the word for business. So you'll see variations of that word even in Egyptian for business, to do, to exchange and trade. And then you also see, of course, to build and manufacture, because it's also the word for order and to make. And so when you think about, like, if you had a whole bunch of wood scattered and then you came and put it and built a house, you put it in order, you arranged it. So this is where you get the concept of to build, to make, to create, And so it's these different variations of the same word that is put into different contexts, and you'll see different prefixes and suffixes to it. And but yeah, Kepper is cognate with Incole.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. And notice that not only does Kepper mean God in ancient Egyptian, Keperu also means the living human beings. And so that's one of the things I was stressing when I say that Incole means God and Incole means man and human, in terms of in reference to us, because that is common throughout Africa, because we are a reflection, we are a spark of that divine, all encompassing, that everything and all things at once.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, that reminds me of some points that Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson would make regarding our physical composition in relationship to stars.
mm-hmm.
And our composition as a ratio as the composition of the universe.
Exactly.
Coming from an astrophysicist and technically a chemistry perspective.
Yeah.
Where the most common element in the universe, according to modern research, is hydrogen.
Mm-hmm.
And then we know that what is the most abundant thing in our body is water. Now, of course, water is we say H2O, or then the chemical name is dihydroxide. So you must look that up and just confirm, make sure that's right. But I think it's dihydroxide, meaning to hydrogen, then it's an oxide based on that. So going back to chemistry 101, so hydrogen, since it's 2, is the most abundant thing in our body, element in our body, and like with the rest of the universe, then of course you go helium, but we don't have helium in our body. Then you go into oxygen, nitrogen, etc. And so that kind of makes you feel like, wow, like when you listen to these philosophical phrases, like we are everything all at once.
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense, given this scientific realization from our brother, because when he speaks, he sounds a lot of times like a philosopher. But but it's coming from a place of research and study rather than just speculation. Which is why I appreciate his work. But again, that brings us back to Ba.Nkole.
Yeah.
Again, takes the ambiguity out of, okay, well, where do we want to name ourselves, etc. Are we exercising our own agency from our own history? And have to let's take, like, for example, of course, with due respect to our Moorish brothers and sisters, and they are our brothers and sisters. There's contingencies about the word Moor. Even among different groups of Moorish brothers and sisters. Not all groups, but there's this thing where every time I see an MR somewhere, it has to be Moors, and then get into this. Sometimes we get to silliness.
Somebody in the chat earlier tried to say that it was a word for love.
Like,
it was calculated with amour in French. I'm like, no, that's not. But that's exactly the point. Like you mentioned this earlier. It's too much ambiguity on these previous labels and associations. Like, we don't need that kind of confusion. Let's start something. We can write it out and give the explanation. Unlike what has happened in the past, we can start fresh and make sure that the future generations understand and know where this comes from and what it is, that we have the text for them to read. And so that's precisely one of the major reasons, for this particular approach. But we are coming up on 3 hours now, so I don't want to make it too long. And so I'm going to end the program. But I do appreciate you, Brother Sanjetti, for coming and giving us your insight and your commentary and support for the idea and the project. And thank you again, Sister Naja. And thank you all who are listening live, and those of you, of course, who are catching the archives. So I appreciate everyone who has donated tonight and everyone who has made a commentary in the chat. Again, I will go back and kind of review everything in the chat. I wasn't able to read everybody's commentary, so if you had certain questions, I might have missed it. I may be able to address it in the comment section. And I don't know if you can tag in comments on YouTube, but it'll be there. And so hopefully you'll read it if it's a question that hasn't been answered in the chat already. And so with that said, again, on tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern, hold on one sec, we will have the discussion on how to modernize worshiping the gods in a way that makes sense. It's going to be an open discussion about properly defining what a god is and how we can modernize the concept of worshiping the gods without being spooky. So this is going to be, it's, for most people reading the title, it's not going to be what you think. Of course, it's clickbait. I'm going to clickbait you in. Anyway, but it is going to be a very informative, show. And so some of it you got tonight, and some of this I'll be repeating on tomorrow, but it'll be in a different context. Some of the slides that we discussed tonight. So that's going to be tomorrow, Friday the 4th, which of course is the ice coldest day, of the year. Founders Day of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. So we'll be doing it up big. Normally I would be out somewhere, but since we in pandemic and we're not trying to get everyone sick, everyone is, staying home and, celebrating in their own unique way. So join the conversation on tomorrow. And with that said, I will see y'all later. Y'all have a good night. Peace.